Welcome to Mr. Hutchings History, where the past comes alive. Let's dive into today's story.
Welcome to our deep dive into the life and legacy of Reies López Tijerina.
Oh, yeah.
He's a really pivotal figure in the Hispanic American civil rights movement.
Yeah, definitely.
But his story is one of those...
You know, one of those.
That kind of leaves you wondering.
Yeah, was he a hero or was he a villain?
Right.
Right.
To help figure that out, we'll be looking at this podcast episode,
Yeah.
which is packed with expert opinions and historical context.
Tons of great stuff in here.
Are you ready to try to unravel this complex figure together?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay.
So Tijerina's fight was all about land rights.
Okay.
And to really understand it, I think we need to go back to 1848.
Oh, wow.
To the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo.
Okay.
This treaty ended the Mexican-American War, but it had some pretty contentious clauses.
Oh, yeah, the treaty. I remember reading about this.
Yeah.
It sparked some major land disputes.
Exactly. The treaty promised to protect the property rights of Mexican citizens
Right.
who chose to stay in the newly acquired U.S. territories.
Right.
But over time, a lot of Hispanic communities felt like those promises were broken.
Yeah.
And it led to what Tijerina saw as like a systematic land grab.
So it wasn't just about the loss of the land itself. It was
Yeah.
about a sense of betrayal.
Betrayal and injustice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that deep-seated resentment really fueled Tijerina's activism.
Okay.
He founded the Alianza Federal de las Mercedes.
Okay.
It's also known as the Federal Alliance of Land Grants,
Right.
to fight for the return of these lands.
And this is where his nickname, King Tiger, comes in.
You got it.
Right.
It really speaks volumes about his personality.
Oh, yeah.
Bold, fearless, and definitely not afraid to roar in the face of injustice.
Right.
In his autobiography, which is aptly titled, "They Called Me King Tiger, My Struggle for the Land and Our Rights."
Okay.
He even wrote, "Anglo power has sought to paralyze me, but it has failed."
Wow. That is a statement.
Right.
He really saw himself as a warrior.
Yeah.
Fighting for his people.
Yeah.
But I think we both know not everyone saw him that way.
Oh, no, not at all.
Some people considered him more of a villain than a hero.
Absolutely. You're right. Opinions on Tijerina are so divided.
Yeah.
You have someone like Jose Angel Gutierrez,
Okay.
who founded the Raza Unida Party, which is a prominent Chicano political party.
Okay.
And he saw Tijerina as a revolutionary figure, like Malcolm X and the Black Panthers.
Wow. Comparing him to Malcolm X?
Right.
That definitely paints him as a radical force for change.
It does. Gutierrez even edited Tijerina's autobiography.
Oh, wow.
So clearly he admired Tijerina's commitment to direct action
Yeah.
and challenging the status quo.
But then you have historians like Lorena Oropesa
Yeah.
who take a very different view.
Right.
She points out that some people saw Tijerina as a con man, a swindler, and a bully.
Yeah, Oropesa's perspective reminds us that even within the Hispanic American community,
Right.
there were these deeply conflicting views of Tijerina about his methods and motives.
So we have this really complex figure, a charismatic leader,
Yeah.
fighting for what seems like a just cause, but with tactics that sparked a ton of controversy.
Yes.
How do we start to reconcile these totally different views of him?
Yeah.
Was there like a particular event that cemented these opinions?
You can't really talk about Tijerina without mentioning the 1967 Rio Arriba County Courthouse raid.
Okay.
This event was a huge flashpoint,
Yeah.
and it solidified both the hero and villain narratives.
Okay, the courthouse raid. I'm ready to unpack that one.
Okay.
What exactly happened?
So in June of 1967,
Okay.
Tijerina and a group of armed Alianza members
Wow.
stormed the courthouse in Tierra, Amarilla, New Mexico.
Okay.
Their goal was to free imprisoned members of the Alianza
Right.
and make a huge statement about their land grant claims.
That sounds incredibly daring.
It was.
I bet it made national headlines.
Oh, it did. The raid sent shockwaves across the whole country,
Yeah.
and it sparked a really heated debate about Tijerina and his methods. For his supporters, it was an act of heroic resistance
Okay.
against an oppressive system that had just ignored their pleas for justice.
Right.
They saw him as a modern-day Robin Hood,
Oh, wow.
fighting for the rights of the downtrodden.
But for his detractors?
They saw it as a really dangerous act of lawlessness,
Uh-huh.
and it confirmed their worst fears about Tijerina.
Okay.
They argued that he was inciting violence and undermining the rule of law,
Mm-hmm.
and that he was jeopardizing the movement's legitimacy in the eyes of the public.
So this one event really polarized public opinion,
Yeah.
solidifying those opposing narratives of him as either a hero or a villain.
Yeah, and the courthouse raid wasn't an isolated incident.
Okay.
So to really understand Tijerina's complexities, we have to look at how historians have tried to interpret him through all these different lenses.
You're saying there are multiple schools of thought
Because
when it comes to analyzing Tijerina.
Yeah, and each school emphasizes different aspects of his story and offers really unique insights into his legacy.
Interesting.
For example, a progressive school, led by historians like Carrie McWilliams, views Tijerina's activism as part of a larger historical arc of resistance against systemic discrimination in the Southwest.
So they're focusing on the deep-rooted injustices that fueled his anger and radicalism.
Exactly. They see him as a product of his time and place, driven to these extreme measures by the denial of his people's rights.
Okay. Then you have the social history school, which is championed by historians like Vicky Ruiz. Okay, so the social history school, what's their take on Tijerina?
They delve into the grassroots nature of the Alianza's campaigns, highlighting how Tijerina mobilized everyday people and gave them a platform to challenge the power structures that had kept them marginalized.
It sounds like they're really interested in like the social dynamics of the movement, the way Tijerina empowered ordinary people to fight for their rights.
That's a great way to put it. They see him as a leader who tapped into the collective frustration and aspirations of a community that had been silenced for way too long.
But it doesn't stop there.
No, it doesn't.
We also have the revisionist school, which takes a more critical look at Tijerina's militant approach.
Historians like Matt Garcia,
while
acknowledging the importance of Tijerina's activism, argue that his confrontational tactics may have alienated potential allies and ultimately limited the movement's long-term success.
So they're saying that while his methods brought attention to the land grant issue, they may have also backfired in some ways.
Precisely. They raise questions about the effectiveness of his more radical tactics and whether a different approach might have yielded better, more lasting results.
That's a really thought-provoking point. I'm starting to see how each of these schools of thought adds another layer of complexity to our understanding of Tijerina.
You got it. And to round out the picture, we have the post-colonial school.
Okay, the post-colonial school. What unique perspective do they bring?
Scholars like Juan Gonzalez connect Tijerina's struggle to the broader history of U.S. imperialism and colonialism. They view the dispossession of Hispanic lands as part of a larger pattern of exploitation and cultural erasure.
So for them, Tijerina's fight was about reclaiming not just land, but also cultural identity and political power for people who've been subjected to centuries of colonial rule.
Exactly. They see him as a symbol of resistance against the forces of colonialism. And a champion for the self-determination of marginalized communities.
This is also fascinating. It's amazing how one man's life can be interpreted through so many different lenses.
It seems like historians are still grappling with how to fully understand his impact.
Yeah, they are. And that's a testament to how significant and multifaceted his legacy really is.
Absolutely.
He wasn't easily categorized.
No.
And his story continues to spark debate and discussion.
Yes, it does.
Even today.
I'm already feeling like I've learned so much. But we're just getting started, right?
We are.
I can't wait to dive deeper into the specific events of his life and explore how his actions continue to shape the fight for Hispanic American rights.
You're in for a treat. Tijerina's story is full of twists and turns, and there's so much more to uncover.
Okay, so we've laid some really great groundwork here, exploring the historical context and contrasting perspectives surrounding Reies López Tijerina. But now I'm kind of ready to zoom in on some key moments in his life that really bring his story to life. Let's start with the formation of the Alianza Federal de las Mercedes back in 1963.
That's a great place to start. The Alianza was more than just like a legal organization. It was a movement rooted in a really profound sense of
cultural identity and historical grievance.
So it wasn't just about reclaiming land on paper. It was about restoring a sense of belonging and dignity that had been stripped away.
Tijerina really understood the emotional power of the land for these communities. It represented their heritage, their connection to their ancestors, and their right to exist in a place where they increasingly felt marginalized.
It sounds like he had a real knack for tapping into those emotions.
He did.
And channeling them into a powerful force for change.
He was a captivating speaker.
Yeah.
Able to rally people to his cause with his fiery rhetoric and his unwavering conviction.
Okay.
He organized protests, marches, speaking tours,
right.
bringing the issue of land grants to the forefront of public consciousness.
But as we discussed earlier, things took a dramatic turn with the Rio Arriba County Courthouse raid in 1967.
Right.
What factors do you think pushed Tijerina and his followers to such drastic action?
Well, it's important to remember that the Alianza had been fighting for land rights through legal channels for years.
Right.
But they felt like their pleas were falling on deaf ears.
Yeah.
They were frustrated with the slow pace of the legal system.
Right.
And they felt like the courts were biased against them.
So they felt like they had exhausted all peaceful options.
A lot of them felt that way.
Okay.
They believed the system was rigged against them, and that direct action was the only way to force the authorities to listen.
But surely they knew that storming a courthouse with guns would have serious consequences.
Yeah, they did.
Okay.
It was a calculated risk.
Yeah.
A desperate attempt to shake things up and get their grievances addressed.
And it certainly did bring national attention to the land grant issue.
It did.
But at what cost?
Yeah, that's the heart of the debate, isn't it?
Right.
While the raid made headlines and forced people to acknowledge the Alianza's claims, it also alienated potential allies. And it reinforced this narrative of Tijerina as a dangerous radical.
It sounds like the raid was a turning point, not just in Tijerina's story, but in the public perception of the whole Chicano movement.
It raised questions about the effectiveness of militant tactics.
Right.
And it sparked this debate within the movement about the best way to achieve their goals.
So even though the raid brought attention to the cause, it also created new challenges and divisions.
Right.
What about Tijerina himself? How did he navigate the aftermath of the raid?
Well, he faced legal repercussions.
Yes.
He spent time in prison for his role in the raid.
Okay.
But despite those setbacks, he remained a powerful symbol of resistance.
Yeah.
And he continued to advocate for land rights and Chicano self-determination.
His spirit wasn't broken?
Not at all.
Okay.
In fact, just a few years later, in 1972, he made a really significant appearance at the Raza Unida Party convention.
Okay.
This was a huge moment in the Chicano movement. And Tijerina being there really speaks volumes about his enduring influence.
I'm curious to learn more about La Raza Unida and why this convention was so important.
So La Raza Unida was a political party.
Okay.
It was formed to empower Mexican Americans and fight for their rights and interests.
Okay.
The 1972 convention was this moment of unity and purpose. It brought together Chicano activists from across the country to strategize and build political power.
So despite the controversy surrounding him, Tijerina was still seen as a key figure in this broader movement.
Absolutely.
For Chicano empowerment.
He was a charismatic leader with a really powerful message that resonated with a lot of people within the movement.
Yeah.
And his presence at the convention really energized the crowd.
Okay.
And it served as a reminder that the fight for justice was far from over.
It's fascinating how he could be both a polarizing figure and a unifying force within the Chicano movement.
It speaks to the complexities of his character and the multifaceted nature of the movement itself.
Right.
There are a lot of diverse perspectives and approaches within La Raza Unida.
Yeah.
Just as there were different opinions on Tijerina's tactics.
So we've got the Alianza, the courthouse raid, and now his involvement with La Raza Unida.
Right.
Each event reveals another layer of this really intricate story.
Yeah.
I'm eager to delve even deeper into Tijerina's own words and motivations.
That's where primary sources become so valuable.
All right.
Things like his autobiography, media coverage of his actions, and records from the La Raza Unida convention.
Yeah.
All of this offers a much more intimate glimpse into the man behind the headline.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's explore those primary sources and see what they reveal about the heart and mind of Reies López Tijerina. So we've covered a lot of ground exploring the events and all those different interpretations of Reies López Tijerina's life.
Yeah.
But now I'm really curious to hear what he had to say for himself.
Well, that's where his autobiography,
They
Called Me King Tiger, comes in.
Okay.
It's a powerful read, full of emotion and conviction.
In his own words, how does he frame his struggle?
He portrays himself as someone driven by a really deep sense of justice and outrage. He writes so passionately about the broken promises of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo and the systematic dispossession of his people. For him, it wasn't just about legal claims. It was about reclaiming a stolen heritage.
I can only imagine how those experiences shaped his whole worldview and just fueled his activism.
Oh, absolutely. It's really clear from his writing that he saw himself as a warrior fighting against an oppressive system that had denied his people their basic rights for way too long. Remember that quote we talked about earlier? Anglo power has sought to paralyze me, but it has failed. I mean, that's pure Tijerina. Defiant and unyielding.
So his autobiography definitely gives us a glimpse
into his fiery spirit.
It does.
But also kind of curious about how his actions were portrayed by people who didn't agree with him. What can we learn from, like, the media coverage of things like the courthouse raid?
Well, the media coverage of Tijerina is really fascinating. Because it reflects those contrasting views of him. Some outlets painted him as a really dangerous radical, a threat to public order. They focused on the violence of the raid. And they highlighted his more confrontational tactics.
So they were playing into the villain narrative, emphasizing those aspects of his actions that would alarm people or alienate mainstream audiences.
Exactly. But other outlets took a more sympathetic approach. They portrayed him as this folk hero, a champion of the oppressed fighting against a system that was rigged against his people. They highlighted the historical injustices that Hispanic communities faced.
And they framed the raid as an act of resistance.
So even back then, there was this media battle over how to portray Tijerina and the Chicano movement. Shaping public perception in very different ways.
It reminds us that history is often told through these multiple lenses. And we have to consider all those perspectives.
Okay, but let's shift gears a little bit. We've talked about his personal writings and how the media portrayed him. But I'm also kind of curious about his interactions with other Chicano leaders. Do the records from the 1972 La Raza Unida Party convention shed any light on that?
They offer a really valuable window into his role within the broader Chicano movement. We have transcripts of speeches, eyewitness accounts, and internal documents that reveal the dynamics between him and other leaders.
So we can see how his ideas were received, what kind of influence he had, and maybe where there were disagreements.
Exactly. Remember, the Chicano movement wasn't a single entity. There were all sorts of different opinions and approaches to achieving social justice. And Tijerina's style wasn't always embraced by everyone, even within La Raza Unida.
It sounds like those records really helped to humanize him. Show him as a complex person navigating the challenges of a really multifaceted social movement.
They do. They remind us that even within movements fighting for a common cause, there can be all these internal debates about strategy and tactics.
Well, we've explored the historical context. We've delved into all the key events. We've examined different perspectives. We even analyzed some primary sources.
We did.
What a journey. What do you think is the most important takeaway for our listener?
I think Reies López Tijerina's legacy is complex, controversial, and undeniably significant. He brought the issue of land grant theft to the forefront of American consciousness. He challenged the status quo, and he inspired generations of activists to fight for social justice.
He was a man who refused to be silenced.
Absolutely.
Who dared to challenge a system that had marginalized his people for far too long.
And whether you see him as a hero, a villain, or something in between, his story is a powerful reminder that history is rarely black and white. It's full of shades of gray. And it's our responsibility to grapple with that complexity as we try to understand the past and shape a more just and equitable future.
He definitely left his mark on history.
He did.
Forcing us to confront some uncomfortable truths and grapple with these really enduring questions about justice, equality, and the meaning of self-determination. So as our listeners continue to explore Tijerina's story and the Chicano movement, what's like a final thought-provoking question they can ponder?
How do you think Tijerina's tactics, both his successes and controversies, influenced the long-term fight for Hispanic American rights? Did his confrontational approach ultimately help or hinder the movement's progress?
That's a great question to consider. And remember, this deep dive is just the beginning of your exploration. Keep researching, keep questioning, and keep forming your own conclusions.
Thanks for listening to Mr. Hutchings History. Keep exploring, and we'll see you next time.